Hi friends, it's Marina again. Hola amigos, es Marina de nuevo. We want to talk about what factors might impact a child's social emotional development. If you said family, if you said environment, you got it right. Definitely some of the factors that influence a child's social emotional development are both internal factors like temperament, the way that the child, their biological needs, the way that the child is organically as they come into this world, their temperament, whether they're feisty or flexible. Another thing that truly impacts a child's social emotional well-being and their development is their environment. You said it, the family. However, their family composition is. Family comes in many shades and shapes and sizes and ways of being. Families are very different. No one family is the same as the other, even if they're considered from the same culture. Families speak different languages and dialects and slang, and families are rich in language and rich in the way that they interact with each other. And so taking the context of family when we look at a child that's in front of us, when we look at one of our children that are coming to our classroom or to our program or to our center, and they're showing up in a certain way that feels hard for us to understand, we must take into consideration that that child's not walking in by themselves that day. Even if they are walking in by themselves, they're truly never walking in by themselves. They're walking in with the full context of their family. They're walking in with what happened that morning for them. They're walking in with what happened during the week. They're walking in with the wrestling play that the older sibling did with them the night before, or they're walking in with the new word that the uncle taught them, right? So children, when they walk in through our doors, they're always walking in within the context of that family. And so as educators, we must always keep that present and validate and honor who they are in the context of their family, which sometimes may not match with our own personal values. And that's a realization and something that we must acknowledge and name and still honor where that child is coming from. So at what age should a child think about this and jot down your answers without discussing them? Just think for yourself. There is no wrong answer for this. At what age should a child use utensils to eat? Wean. Sleep alone. Play alone. Be toilet trained during the day. As you can see, there really isn't a specific answer. Children, depending on their family context, can do these things at different times during their development. Utensils for certain children in certain households are used at a higher rate than other households. They wean at different rates. This chart illustrates for us how households of Caucasian children versus households of Puerto Rican children or children Filipino. As you can see for yourself, these children do these different biological things and developmental things at their own rate and specific to who they are within the context of their family, which is something we should always honor and value. Consider this. How might different cultural expectations among you and other caregivers and or parents impact your work with children and their social emotional development? As a caregiver, can you think of any examples where you had differing values, beliefs, and ideas about how to care for a child? I can think of many examples, even within my own family, of times where there were just differences. I raised my child a certain way, and my mom perhaps didn't agree with me because she was from a different generation. And so these differences will arise. And this is another place to look internally, to value who we are, to understand our values without minimizing the value of other. I'm gonna play this skateboarding toddler amazing video, which some may find really hard to view. For a child to be so independent, for a child to be exploring in this way, and to be dominating a skill as such.
Yeah, boy! Could this be the most amazing skateboarder ever, as a 2-year-old from Australia shows off his skills? The incredible footage shows Carly Stone Kelly skating down streets and hopping over curbs on his board. Woohoo! High five! Yeah, yeah. Good.
That video is so amazing. I find it amazing because I'm sure some people might see this and cringe because we see the child, obviously, right, without clothing, without a helmet, just going and doing all these streets tricks, and he's a toddler. So that might feel really hard for an adult who might have raised their children really protected. That might feel really hard. But this is not a time to negate who that child is within his cultural context and how he is growing and developing. And the skills that he's developing, he might get hurt. There might be an element of getting hurt, and there might not be one. It's really his family who is supporting him to be exploratory. And that might feel difficult. And I think that is a good time for an adult to say, watching that video felt really difficult for me. And these are the things that made it feel difficult. And still pausing and honoring that family for where they are with that child. So culture impacts the way children learn, cope, solve problems, and communicate. Viewing the child through this cultural context provides an understanding of the child and the factors that influence their behaviors.
Hi, Sue Vivian here with my colleague Sean Marie Dumont. We are very excited today to talk to you about the funnel. We love the idea of the funnel and it has really helped mold a lot of our thinking. Sean, do you want to start us?
Great. So when we think about this funnel, we realize that this funnel doesn't actually exist inside of us, but we'd like to give you this visual to help you understand the way that we think as human beings and how we got to the point where we are today. So the funnel encompasses all of our beliefs and values and attitudes. And we start developing this funnel from the moment we're born. And it is filled and formed by all the things that happen to us every day. The people we interact with, our families are very important in the funnel. We gain our beliefs and values from those around us. And we also have the opportunity to add to our funnel through learning experiences and interacting with people, reading things, viewing things. So our funnel really helps shape how we make decisions. So when you see or hear something, it goes through your funnel, and all of your beliefs and values have some kind of input into that information that's passing through. And what comes up out of the bottom is your attitude, what you feel about this thing. So every single person has a very unique funnel because we've had very unique lives and very unique experiences. And the things that come out of our funnel, the decisions that we make in a split second, are going to be different and unique to us. When we think about the funnel and our attitudes, we really want to be thinking about recognizing who we are, why we believe what we believe, what our values are, and just being able to identify those when we're interacting with someone else, and also recognizing that the person we're interacting with has a very unique funnel of their own.
Sean,
Go ahead, Sue.
I think of it, visually, I have this picture of a funnel and I have like little marbles going in it. And that little picture helps me remember that my funnel was built because I have one brother and we lived in a street and we played kickball in the afternoon until supper. All the things from my childhood, the church that we went to, the neighborhood that we grew up in. So all of those little marbles were coming in. And your funnel, Sean, is different because you had different siblings. You had a different life as far as what was going on in your neighborhood or what your parents believed or your grandparents' input. So both of our funnels are very different. But all those little marbles went in and they kind of came out at the end with how we walk around in the world today.
That's absolutely true. And I think that when we talk about things like beliefs and values, these are not small things. These are really important to us. This is how we live our life. And when we meet someone who has a funnel that's very different from ours, we often have difficulty finding a way to communicate with that person. And often it can be as simple as just being able to say, I recognize who I am as a person because of my life experiences, and I want to be able to recognize you as an important person because of your life experiences. And that in turn might help us adjust our attitude, the way that our beliefs and values leak out into the world. So when we're talking with someone, especially I think when we're building relationships with families, and early childhood is incredibly important to us. We've dedicated our lives to it. And we meet a family who doesn't have that information in their funnel. And they may look at the child care center or the school in a way that doesn't meet our values and our beliefs. And so we often have difficulty communicating with those parents. So just being thoughtful, we would never ask you to change your funnel. We might ask you to think about different marbles you might place in there. And we might do the same for families. We might offer them some information to run through their funnel to see if it's a good fit for them.
An example I always think of, Sean, is teachers might get really, really excited about something that the child did during the day and they put it in the backpack and they're so excited about it and, they can't wait to see the parent the next day. And the next day morning comes and the item hasn't been taken out of the backpack and the teachers are just so distraught. And they just feel so badly because the child was so excited about this. But they're in their funnel. They're in their funnel about, I know how excited this child was working on this and all the language he used and all the information we shared and how much fun we had doing it. I know all that. And I also know because I have early childhood experience and knowledge, all of the wonderful learning that happened. But the parent doesn't have the same funnel, doesn't have the same marbles, because they don't have that early childhood experience and know all the learning that can happen when you're building something with clay that the child was working on. So the idea is that my marbles are going in. I had the experience with a child. I knew what was happening. I also have early childhood experience. And the parent's funnel doesn't have either one of those things. So when the parent doesn't acknowledge this creation the child did, we're coming from two different places. But maybe if I give more information, maybe if I put more marbles in and talk about what happened during the learning that day, or maybe I talk about another time, I talk about all the learning that can happen in ordinary day things that kids do during the day, like playing with Play-Doh or clay, or when we were playing in the water or doing dishes or whatever. So giving the parent a couple more marbles about what learning looks like, and then maybe sharing what actually happened. So I just wanted to give that kind of visual example of the marbles that went into one person's funnel that didn't get into the other. But that doesn't mean we can't add to each other's, as long as we're kind of willing to listen and open to hearing things.
I think that's really key, is the idea of being a listener, an active listener, as well as being able to step back and recognize, I take the emotion out of it. I shouldn't get upset about this. This is who I am. I can't expect everyone to have the same ideas as I do. So just recognizing that someone else may have another way of looking at something than we do can really help when you're trying to build relationships with so many different people. In a very highly emotional place. Early childhood is a big deal. It's an emotional place.
Well, and I think when there's a lot of emotion going on, then we don't do as well listening, and our brains, the front of our brains aren't working as much, and we can't be creative and flexible and ready for something that we could share or get excited about or create. So I think that the idea of letting the emotions settle down and let the front part of our brain work is the place that we want to be, so we're ready and open. And so the emotions can get in the way at that point. So kind of like you said, step back. That's their funnel. How can I add something to their funnel and not be in that place of I'm mad at them or disappointed or whatever the word is?
I think too that as we go through this training and we learn some pyramid practices, we may actually rub up against some ideas that are different than what's in our funnel at this moment in time. And so just being thoughtful about that as well as we go through these ideas, these strategies, these pyramid practices, being thoughtful about, oh, that's a good match for what I believe to be true, or this is something new. I think I'm going to have to think about this a little bit more. It can be very helpful when we're talking about other kinds of activities.
I think you're right, John. It's really huge when you're thinking about some content sometimes in practices. But I think the other point here that we're talking about at the same time is the relationships, to develop the relationships with families and parents, that we really have to keep the idea of the funnel alive and well in the front of our head at all times, and to listen and to ask questions and to be open to different ways of thinking. And I'm thinking of the child that comes from a culture where they don't look directly at an adult's eyes. In other cultures, that's disrespectful when you don't look someone in the eye. So being aware of there's different ways of thinking and doing things. And again, we're not saying one way is right or wrong, but we're trying to understand each other and then come to kind of a way of being with that person, having that relationship with that person. The relationships are foundational. We can't go any further if we don't have the relationship with kids or between staff members or even with, especially with families.
So just being thoughtful again about recognizing the things that you believe to be true and valuable may not be a match for the person you're talking to, whether you're right, whether it's a coworker or a parent or a child. So thinking about that as you think about the way you're interacting with children, when you're doing something like that, is it something that you remember as a child as well? So thinking about how your funnel was formed and what's there, and using that information.
And sometimes we can look back and realize the things that were happening in our childhood that we really loved. And so we're going to continue that tradition or that way of being because it was so important to us. Or there might be something from when we were growing up or part of our culture that we don't agree with anymore, or we realize we've evolved to a different understanding of things that we might want to change. So it's being thoughtful about what are we bringing with us into our day and our way of being, and what are things that we change, what looks like our funnel looks like, and always being ready to acknowledge that we can grow and learn and evolve as long as we're open to listening.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. We can also think about this when we're thinking about building relationships with children and why it's so important. As you said, it is the basis for everything that comes after that. It is, if we don't have a relationship with children, we are going to have difficulty helping them learn, helping them grow, having a meaningful interaction with them. So really putting those relationships at the forefront of our work is really important.
The connection that we make as we build those relationships is, done through eye contact, kind of paying attention and being present. And, maybe you get down to someone's level where the person's sitting or standing, you're recognizing where you are, and being conscious of, am I paying attention? Do they understand? Am I leaning in? Am I, all those little strategies that we do to tell someone that we care about who they are and what they're saying and what they're thinking. Those are the, start of building that relationship. And then having that child or parent know they can trust us because we're consistent and we're always there for them and we're always willing to listen and that we truly do want the best for them and we care about them. And I think that has it's over time. It doesn't happen the first time you speak with someone. So you have to keep up that work of being present and being thoughtful with them. But I think this is just a very basic way of looking at, and then you would probably layer some strategies on top of that as you're working with families and being with families and children. But I think that those first initial strategies are so important. It's just like we know as adults, who do we trust, right? Someone that's there for us, someone that's loyal, someone that's always present, someone that will take care of us when we need support, and so thinking about what people in the community and our families and relationships, what is a satisfying relationship? Can I bring those qualities to our work with kids and families?
When I think about meeting someone new for the first time and getting to know them a little bit and then getting to see them again a second time, it's the most wonderful feeling when they remember something that you said to them. So it's the smallest things that help build those strong relationships. It can be just a wave of a hand or just making eye contact, acknowledging that a parent has walked through the door and giving them a smile. It's not a complex thing, but it does take time. Absolutely.
I think the point you just mentioned about remembering something they said or did and then bringing that back into the second meeting with them, it gives you a starting off point that's further along than when you first met. And then by the third and fourth time, now you have lots of starting off points to be, and you are now in a relationship. But I think, as we finish off here, our conversation about the funnel, I think the big takeaways I hope people are walking away with are being aware of your funnel, recognizing that everyone has different funnels and they look a little different than you, keeping the kind of emotion out of it so that you are open and ready to hear and ready to learn about things, about other people, about what else we can do. Or if it's content, let me think about that. That's something interesting? I never thought about it that way. But then this is all going to support your relationship building with families and how foundational and important they are and what they look like when they first start. Anything else, Sean? What did I leave out?
I think that you covered everything. The one thing I might say would be to know someone else, you need to know yourself. Mm-hmm. So just being aware. Thanks so much for sharing these slides with us.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
The key to forming strong brain architecture is what's known as serve and return interaction with adults. In this developmental game, new neural connections form in the brain as young children instinctively serve through babbling, facial expressions, and gestures. And adults return the serve, responding in a very directed, meaningful way. It starts very early in life, when a baby coos and the adult interacts and directs the baby's attention to a face or hand. This interaction forms the foundation of brain architecture upon which all future development will be built. It helps create neural connections between all the different areas of the brain, building the emotional and cognitive skills children need in life. For example, here's how it works for literacy and language skills. When the baby sees an object, the adult says its name. This makes connections in the baby's brain between particular sounds and their corresponding objects. Later, adults show young children that those objects and sounds can also be represented by marks on a page. With continued support from adults, children then learn how to decipher writing and eventually to write themselves. Each stage builds on what came before. Ensuring that children have adult caregivers who consistently engage in serve and return interaction, beginning in infancy, builds a foundation in the brain for all the learning, behavior, and health that follow.
As we saw in the brain building video, the developing brain needs social connection for optimal development. Secure attachment is tied to this. Brain development begins in the 5th week of pregnancy. At birth, infants have roughly 100 billion brain cells. By age 2, the structures of the brain that will influence later learning are already formed. This means that the most important brain growth and development occurs long before a child goes to school. The brain is comprised of nerve cells or neurons, and each nerve cell has branches or dendrites that connect with other nerve cells. Each of these cells starts out relatively unconnected, as you can see in the left part of the brain picture. Each new experience or piece of information and interaction that babies have with others create new neural connections or synapses in the brain. As a caregiver, you are in a primary relationship with each child, and you create moments of connection for each child multiple times each day. You really are a brain builder. The drive to connect and then feel safe enough to explore and master one's environment is inborn in humans. Infants and toddlers' active participation in their own learning and development is an important aspect of their mental health. It is in the context of family and community relationships where infants and toddlers learn to communicate their feelings and experiences with significant caregivers as well as other children. When these relationships go well, children develop a sense of themselves as competent, effective, and valued individuals. Culture influences every aspect of human development, including how infant mental health is understood, adults' goals and expectations for young children's development, and the child rearing practices used by parents and caregivers. For example, eating, sleeping, discipline, toileting, routines. Attachment is a pattern of interaction that develops over time as the infant or toddler and caregiver engage. Repeated interactions allow the infant or young child to learn what to expect from the other, his or her caregiver. These repeated interactions ideally lead to a fairly predictable relationship. So what do you see about the relationship between this caregiver and child in the photo? You really feel like there's a strong connection between these two and that there is a very secure attachment. What are some of the things you see on both of their faces and just the way that the child is being held? It's within the family that children first begin to learn to read other people's responses to their feelings and behavior. How their family members respond to them will shape the way that children learn to respond to others and to interact in their own relationships. From a very early age, children learn about how emotions can be communicated by the ways they are expressed by family members. Children learn about acceptable social emotional expression not only from what family members and other caregivers say, but also from their facial expressions and body language. Attachment is the ongoing emotional bond that the child builds with a familiar adult through a nurturing and responsive relationship. Attachment is a pattern of interaction that develops over time as the child and caregiver engage and connect. Infants and toddlers who are building attachment relationships tend to seek and maintain closeness to important people in their lives, especially during stressful situations. With young children, birth to 18 months, their nervous systems are still developing and they're still learning how to organize their bodies and all of the sensory input they're experiencing. They seek attachment relationships because they need a calm, co-regulating partner to help them feel organized, calm, and safe. Another area that impacts social emotional learning is temperament. We're going to spend some time looking at this. Temperament appears to be biologically based and is fairly consistent over time. It affects the child's reactions to other people and the environment. For more information on temperament, you can look at the What Works brief on challengingbehavior.org. For now, I'd like to take some time to reflect on all of the different things that go into temperament. And it can be really helpful to think about yourself and a child you particularly enjoy interacting with. So think about that child and what is their activity level? Are they very active or less active? What are the biological rhythms, the predictability of that? How about their approach withdrawal responses to new situations? Does their mood tend to be positive or negative? What about the intensity of their reactions? How about sensitivity to sound, light, feel of clothing, and new tastes? Adaptability or ease of managing transitions or changes. How distractible is the child? If they're working on a puzzle, does their attention get easily pulled away? How much persistence does the child demonstrate? Can they continue with a puzzle that's really difficult for them? So once you think about that child, then you can think about yourself on the same continuum. It can be helpful to even plot out how you are on the temperament in all of these different levels and compare it to a child that you particularly enjoy interacting with. Some teachers like to do the same thing with a child who they find might have some challenging behaviors for them. Some teachers have even done this with all of the children in the classroom just to see
how it affects their relationship, and really thinking about each child and how they interact with the environment. This can be another very helpful exercise for caregivers. It's all about perspective taking and reflection. Sometimes when I'm with teachers in person, I like to put all different size footprints on the floor. Some adult, some very large adult, thinking about maybe a father coming for the third day in a row late because of his job, and he's embarrassed that he's late and what that's like to be in his shoes. Sometimes I put very, very small feet, and I ask teachers to stand on top of those footprints and think about what it's like to be that child or that parent or that grandparent. So when we're thinking about children, pretend that you're answering these questions from the perspective of a child. I am 3 years old. This is what it's like to be me, and think about those temperament traits we just talked about. I don't like it when I don't like it when you're loud, when you say my name. I don't like it when it's too bright in the classroom. And then the last one, it would help me if you spoke in a softer voice. It would help me if you didn't keep the lights so bright. That kind of thing where you're really thinking about what it's like to be the child. Doing these exercises can really help caregivers be more responsive to each and every child. We're giving children the message that they're accepted for who they are, with individualization for differences where they need support, whether it's low light, soft sounds, easing into new situation, or opportunities for lots of movement. All of this helps support our relationship building. And it's really about making a good fit. So no matter what the temperament of the child and the temperament of the caregiver, how do you make a good fit so that every child feels supported? And so we take some time to acknowledge a child's temperament traits as well as our own. And then we find out more about the child, either from the family or other caregivers. And then we consider the ways to adapt the daily schedule, the energy level, the lighting, sound, pace, activity level, and stimulation to best match the child's temperament. And we're going to spend a lot of time on that when we're working through the pyramid modules. And the most important thing is to focus on the positive attributes of all temperament traits. So this is really about reframing. And I love this. Let's think about the words we use. So instead of shy, we might just say cautious. We want children to be cautious. We don't want them rushing out into a road or doing things that are dangerous. How about persistent versus stubborn? Persistent, that's a positive trait, and it helps children throughout their lives. How about energetic versus overactive or hyper? So sometimes just changing the vocabulary we use to think about and describe children can really be helpful. One of the major messages of the pyramid model is making deposits. So that is maintaining a 5-to-1 positive to negative response to children and giving attention when the child is engaged in appropriate behaviors. So what would a deposit look like? Smiling, giving enough wait time, really observing children and giving them our attention, using a calm voice, active listening, so repeating what a child says and elaborating, helping them really express their ideas and emotions. And what might a withdrawal look like? When we say no, don't, stop. Anytime we give a demand, even just asking them to clean up is a withdrawal for most children. When we say using a child's name, that's when a child's name is used in a repeated way, such as Michael, Michael, Michael. What did I say, Michael? Using a loud voice or an intimidating request. And how does it relate to temperament, like we talked about in the last slide? Some children are going to have a much tougher time if you use a loud voice. Some children need more wait time, especially in large group activities. So teachers' hugs and high fives, smiles, laughter, and affectionate words, those are all deposits and help promote children's positive responses toward teachers and others. And children's experience with teachers who showed warmth and respect towards them. So teachers who listened when children talked to them and made eye contact, those children develop positive and competent peer relationships. Supporting a child's healthy social and emotional growth takes a commitment from all primary caregivers in the child's life. This includes families and teachers. And it's important to remember that young children also observe our relationships. So how we treat colleagues, how we feel about the families, they pick up on those things. Their observations shape their expectations for how people treat each other, and therefore shapes their developing social skills and emotional competence. Can you think about what is the most important thing in your life? Take a moment. What's the most important thing in your life right now? Most of you will probably say family, loved ones, children. They're all built from relationship, and it is the core of who we are. The relationships that we build with children and families and our coworkers are the foundation of everything we do. Children learn and develop through the relationships they build. How does temperament really play into this? We have to think about each and every child and what would be a deposit and withdrawal for them. So when we're thinking about 5 to 1, new research is showing it might be more like 20 to 1. So if we say no, we have to think about all the positives we can do for children, either verbal or nonverbal, to reinforce what are the positive skills we are trying to encourage in children. And that positive descriptive feedback is what's really going to work. Let's think about all of the different ways that a caregiver can give these deposits as we're watching the video.
I was thinking we can have a drama party or a slumber party.
That sounds like fun. I used to have those when I was little.
What?
Pajama parties.
You?
Yeah, we'd have pizza and stuff, you know.
We used to have pizza. I had pizza at the center.
At the center?
Yep.
Is it from the pizza place or does the lady make it?
The lady make it. We would watch the SpongeBob movie.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I didn't see that. How is it?
Great. It's
Yeah.
brilliant.
Can you tell me about the story? Because I don't know anything about it, because I don't have little kids at home to watch this stuff. So you all have to tell me what's going on.
Well, I'll tell you about the stuff eating.
Okay, go
and
ahead.
Toys.
What happened?
They are copying you by the house area, and the block area, and the computer, and the writing area, and the painting area, and...
We don't have art now. Remember, that's our studio. Is that the after-school place you go to?
Yeah, and they got sand,
But
and they copy the doors we got.
whose is better, this class or the after-school?
This class.
Why?
Because I like it when Janelle was there, and Rita, and Miss Ellie.
Okay.
and Miss Elizabeth.
So what do you do there? What do you do there?
Well, I can tell you the stuff they got.
What do they got?
They got red, blue, green, and some more planks and bowls.
Yeah?
The same cups.
Yeah. Oh, so they don't use paper when they eat? They have regular cups and stuff? Yeah.
For the house area.
Oh, they have the same ones as us?
Yup. And they copying you with everything. And the other one, the computer work, and the other computer work.
Well, that one computers. We're going to try to get it fixed. I'm going to ask, okay? Because it's hard to wait your turn, huh? Who's over there on the rug? That Miss Bella?
Miss Bella and Miss Elizabeth.
Oh. So, but you have a good time there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think they're really copying us. I think they know what children like to play with. So they have the same stuff. What's your favorite thing there?
I'll tell you what's my favorite toy.
What's your favorite toy?
Later with my teacher, Miss Ellie.
Oh, what about the after school? What do you like there?
I like to play with Kelly and Claudia.
Oh, so you made new friends already?
Yeah.
Well, I think that's because you're a wonderful little girl, huh?
Mhm.
Have they been there for a long time?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they helped you out with like the rules and stuff?
Yeah.
Or do they have the same rules as us?
Yup.
Same?
The old ones.
The old ones?
And they try to copy us with the brand new stuff too.
Yeah, but do you remember when we talked about if someone copying you, that means they must like what you're doing, so it's okay?
Yeah.
So they must think that we're really good here, huh? Yeah, you think so?
So think about some examples of making deposits. The teacher is at the child level and is in close proximity to children during learning activities, sitting with the child or children at the blocks, painting, coloring, playing dress up in dramatic play, and really commenting specifically about what the children are doing. I like the way you mixed your paint colors. That was very creative. Wow, look at the way you and your friend are playing together and sharing the food in the kitchen. So you're really being specific and you're talking to a child one-on-one or specifically to a small group of children. Teacher uses only positive physical contact when interacting with children. Hugging children, high fives, taps on the shoulder or back, or holding a child's hand while guiding the child through the classroom. Whatever is supportive for that individual child. Those would be two examples of making deposits with children, verbally and non-verbally. How about this last example? Teacher sits away from children doing paperwork, watching from afar, and yells out, "Nice job, almost time for cleanup soon," to the whole group. How is that last example different? Is that really giving deposits to children. It's not a withdrawal, but it's also not giving specific deposits. So what are some of the things you saw in that video? Lots of verbal and nonverbal reinforcement. That teacher really seemed to enjoy being with that girl and gave her the attention. You see her eyes. The caregiver was so attentive and repeating, moving her mouth as the little girl talked about her experiences, and they engaged together almost like they were having a friendship. So we have to think about what kinds of deposits are we giving children throughout the day. That's going to foster their confidence and competence, and also make the day more enjoyable for us as caregivers. I really love this quote for anyone who works with children. This is from Yuri Brofenbrenner. Every child needs at least one adult who is irrationally crazy about him or her. And I think we saw that in the video. So Yuri Brofenbrenner, he developed the ecological systems theory to explain how everything in a child and the child's environment affects how a child grows and develops. And some things that nurture the relationships between caregivers and children are following the children's interest. So following the child's lead in play, responding to the child's words and questions, asking questions, demonstrating interest, listening to a child's responses and being attentive. Those are all things that we saw in that video. Being on the floor with the child, staying with the pretending, and modeling polite words such as please and thank you. Those are all things that we can do. And we really want to make sure that each and every child in our classroom feels special and liked. So one of the links that we put in your resource list is this guiding principles handout from the State Department of Education on full, equal, and equitable partners with families. And we really encourage you to look at this document carefully and reflect on the practices that you have with the families in your classroom. So just like we make deposits with children, how are we making deposits with families? How do we connect with them? How do they know what's happening in the classroom on a daily basis? Do we know what's happening at home? Do we give them information for promoting their child's social emotional development at home? And family engagement is a full, equal, and equitable partnership among families, educators, and community partners to promote children's learning and development from birth through college and career.
You know how important it is for parents to become involved in their children's learning. And you've probably found some great ways already to get parents to participate. But it's a continuing challenge. Fuel your thinking with ideas from Jamie Klein, the director of the Child and Family Development Resource Center at Eastern Connecticut State University.
How'd things go today?
You had a good day.
Yeah, good.
The research really suggests that their children do better in school when parents are involved.
Yeah, tell me.
Do you remember?
Trust is the foundation of really any good early childhood program. If you build trust with the family, then, the world is your oyster. You can really do anything, because then that allows you to develop a really intimate relationship, and it also allows you into their world.
7 pounds. So.
She gained weight? Good.
Yeah, I had to buy her new clothes and everything. I knew there was a difference.
Leaving a child at any center, there's always an anxiety level, a mixture of relief that you have them in such good hands with anxiety that you're not there every moment, and again, relief that you're not there every moment of the day.
What's the second letter in your name?
They're in the hands of other people, so not only is it an advantage and reassuring to the parent to know what's happening when they're at school, but also creates a kind of cohesion with what you do at home, knowing where they are in terms of language and skills and motor abilities. You sort of notice as a parent, but it becomes a part of the blur of watching a child grow up.
Sometimes parents really need coaching on how to ask their children questions.
You want to tell Mom what we did at Circle Time?
Yeah, tell me.
Do you remember?
And one of the things that we teach parents is to ask very specific questions.
You guys still learning about spiders?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
And when they actually spend time in the classroom, they become so familiar with the routine that they automatically know how to ask questions like, what did you have for snack today?
So, ready?
When a parent is involved in a child's schooling, it impacts their educational experience because they have a basis, they have a foundation, and they have some knowledge as to what that child is learning and why that child is learning that at that particular time. So it's that tie-in of extending the learning from the classroom to home.
Right? Well, he said, is it when it's cold and we hug?
So that's why that link from home to school is so important. That's why we want parents in the classroom. That's why we provide parent newsletters. That's why at the end of the day, we'll have a little wipe-off board that says what the highlights of the day were. We have parent volunteers who just really want to just come in and be in the classroom, for whatever amount of time, they can volunteer. And that's really a wonderful way to develop relationships with parents.
These grow on trees, right?
Yeah.
These grow on trees?
Yes, they do grow on trees.
One of the things that has been so successful is giving parents actual hands-on material. It may be, just a list of favorite books that their children enjoy reading and taking them home from the library at school.
Things to give you some ideas, but then
we have the PTO, the Parent-Teacher Organization, which is an organization that meets, at least monthly. They plan different activities both in the classroom, and then they plan events out of the classroom, family events.
Share information between each other about
But I'm hoping that what it will develop into is also a sort of feedback mechanism for parents, that we develop a way of having conversations with teachers.
There are so many ways that parents can get involved. The key is to offer a variety of ways so that the parent can find some way that they're comfortable.
Let it be said by our children's children that when we were tested, we refused.
I think once parents really have the foundation and understand why we do certain things the way that we do them, then, they understand, and it's much easier for them to become involved and stay connected and try to practice those things at home.
Hey, Mommy.
look at his tongue. You.
It's big. But
Hi, Melanie.
I'm the baby.
Hi, baby.
What are you doing, Mommy?
Strong relationships with families need to be in place right from the beginning. That is part of the base of the pyramid. It cannot be done when a challenging behavior occurs and have that be your first contact with families. You need to work on the relationships right from the start. And so we're going to watch a video on building relationships with families with responsive greetings. And then we're going to think a lot more about how to make those deposits on a daily basis with families.
Look who is here. Here is Christopher. Good morning, Mr. Christopher. How are you?
I'm good today.
How was the driving over here? Good?
I took a little nap.
When I'm making the transition, leaving Christopher off at the daycare and I'm getting ready to leave, I always feel my heart skip a little beat. But I know that as soon as Miss Nikki picks him up, that it's going to be okay.
How is he? He feels better now?
Yeah, he's having a little problem with his teeth.
The simple act of Nikki asking for information sends a powerful message to the parents.
She's very interested in Christopher, in what he's doing, how he's developing. She listens to everything that I tell her. Audrey said that he doesn't like his waffle anymore, so he's going to have toast for breakfast this morning.
Oh, wonderful.
With peanut butter. You want toast with peanut butter?
See, I'm getting big now.
He's just learned about peanut butter.
Really? When did he have it?
Over the weekend.
Yum. I wasn't here yesterday, so I didn't get to know about that. So that is new.
That's right.
So, did he have anything before coming this morning?
There are many important strategies that you can use to build strong relationships with families. It is important to consider families as partners and to consider how your communication and policies convey this to them. Partnerships always involve two-way communication. There are many ways to ensure that communication is a two-way street. I like to think about both the method of communication and the content of the communication when I think about families. When thinking about methods of communication, consider what works best for families. It's important that the ways that we communicate with families are also feasible for teachers, of course. You can't expect a teacher to write a long individual note or call every family every single day, unless they have a lot of time built in to do that. But perhaps you might find that one family would rather have a longer note once a week, and for another family, a quick daily text is preferable. By checking in, you can make sure you're spending your time wisely on communication that's going to work for families. You'll see that some of the later strategies on this slide focus more on the content of the communication, and that a lot of these strategies are about what families can share with you. One strategy that I wanted to highlight is asking families about the skills they see their child using at home and in the community. Some of you may know about CT DOTS. CT DOTS stands for the Connecticut Documentation and Observation for Teaching System. It's a framework for assessing the skills young children show relative to the Connecticut Early Learning and Development Standards. This system involves family input as an important strategy for gathering information. This information can be gathered through many different methods, but the important part is that you're seeking to understand what a child is showing at home, at school, and in the community. This allows for meaningful conversations about skills, about what is important to families, and about what strategies might work across settings. Because social and emotional development is part of the Connecticut Early Learning and Development Standards, it's also an important part of CT DOTS. CT DOTS includes possible questions for communicating with families related to regulation, emotional expression, sense of self, relationships with adults, and relationships with peers. The OEC will also offer booklets that allow families to provide quick and easy written input on their child's learning and development across the different areas addressed in CT DOTS. These family input pages include strategies for families to promote their child's learning at home. For some families, this format may be useful, so you can check these out on the OEC website.
So we cannot forget about making deposits with our colleagues. And why is it so important to have a team with good relationships? To the support of children with challenging behavior, to your work with administrators, other caregivers, children and families. Just like we talked about earlier, children observe everything we do. They know when we like each other. They love being in a classroom where the teachers really do enjoy being together and working together. And children pick up on that. So it's important to make the time, to take time to work on these relationships with each other. Some teachers wear bracelets with 5 beads of one color and 1 bead of another color, and that's their reminder about deposits. So just like with a child, if they say the child's name in a not very friendly way, they push that 1 bead over and they have to do 5 positive interactions with that child. And the same thing with colleagues. I really encourage coworkers to think about giving each other compliments all day long. It increases morale in the classroom. Are you recognizing all the things that the teachers do for each other and for the children and for the families all day long? Thank you so much for bringing that roll of paper towels over. You just saved me a trip and I could sit with the children. Things like that. It may seem like they're very small, but they really add up. And that's what's so wonderful about deposits. Are we thinking about recognizing all of the adults who support our children and families? Are we recognizing the food service staff and the bus drivers and the people that clean our buildings? Are we recognizing our volunteers? All adults should have defined roles that they perform for each activity, as evidenced by lesson plans and our daily schedules, listed responsibilities, so adults really know what's expected of them in the classroom. We want very clear communication among the children and adults. And the communication between adults is related to children always, and instruction, roles, responsibilities, and routines. Adults give positive feedback to each other and children throughout the day to encourage the most positive atmosphere we can have. So as we come to the end of the first part of Module 1, take a few moments to write down one thing you've done or would like to do to build the relationships with families. And what is one thing you have done to make a deposit with a team member or a team member has done for you? I've worked with one program where there is a teacher who stocks up on candy and some other things that she knows will brighten other teachers' days. And she keeps it in her locker and doesn't lock her locker. And it has really been a great morale booster. And now other teachers leave her some funds to keep it going because everyone loves knowing that they can go get a piece of chocolate during the day. So it's things like that. Well, how can we really build those deposits? As we finish the nurturing and responsive relationships part of Module 1, there is a checklist that can be found at challengingbehavior.org and an action plan. And I've included the links for you. We will see you when you return for high quality supportive environments, the second part of Module 1. And thank you for all you do. Have a great day.